Did you know that 80% of candidates will turn down a job if the hiring process wasn't clear or confusing? So let's make sure that the candidates that you want not only apply, but stay through your entire process. So first about me, why do I think I could talk about hiring? Throughout all of my professional career, I have been either a direct hiring manager or have had to deal with hiring managing duties from college all through now. And I've had different experiences, not only being a full part of creating the process or just being the interviewer or dealing with screening application. And I find that when I'm able to craft the entire process and making sure that each step of the way is cohesive, understanding, and clear to your candidates, it makes it easier not only for them, but also for the hiring manager as well as the CEO or the owner of the business. An effective hiring process not only helps you find top talent, reduce turnover, but also helps fill with the right person to take off the load of anyone on your team that you're trying not to lose because you have too much on everybody's plate. So let's dig into it. So in your hiring process, you want to make sure that you have a very clear job description. And if you are not sure how to write one, I'll give some pointers in this video, but also I recommend you watching my other video about creating a job description. We want to make sure the title is clear, the responsibilities are clear, and the qualifications you're seeking are also clear and easily to understand. We don't want anything buried in long text or anything buried somewhere so the candidate could find it. The job description can be part of your screening process in the sense that it can help you weed out some people who are not reading it, but it shouldn't be written out like a complex puzzle or test. It should be clear and understandable, and then from there, it's easier to screen people out if they're not reading or not fully looking through what they are applying for, which does happen in the application process. We want to tailor each hiring process to match the role that you're trying to hire. For example, if you're trying to hire for an operational assistant, you may not want to or need to ask for a portfolio, nor will you really need to offer any sort of creative test for them to do. Operations are operations. I know there's some people who try to hire a unicorn, but when we're trying to be clear and understandable in what you're trying to hire, it's very important to make sure that it matches the role and responsibilities. Now, if you're hiring for either a marketing assistant, a graphic designer, or web designer, then you would probably ask for a portfolio, especially if you're asking for experience, or later down in the process, you may have a paid skill assessment, which I will talk about in a minute. Different parts of your hiring process can be laid out in your job description. You may not lay out every single step that you internally do, but the bulk of it should be on your job description so that the candidate can understand what the next steps are, what's going to happen, so they're aware, and it mitigates some questions that you're asked along the way, which can help save the sanity of your hiring manager or you if you're the one doing all of the hiring by yourself. So on your job description, again, watch the video for a more in-depth look about a job description. I would recommend putting the big parts. So the initial application, which would be like a form that they could fill out, then the initial screening interview where they meet with you or meet with the hiring manager. Then you have a secondary application that's going to be asking hypothetical questions, a little bit more in depth. Not every position or role that you're hiring needs a secondary, only if you need more information. This could also be a good time to do a paid skills assessment, or that could come after the next one, which is the final interview with the CEO. So a longer process could look like this. For example, if you're hiring for an in-house full-time web designer, you may want to do an initial application followed by a screening interview, then a paid skills assessment, then a final interview. That would look like something you can do for a web designer, especially if full-time. You want to make sure that they're going to be vibing with your culture and what you need. That process would be helpful. If you're hiring for someone that is a few hours a month and maybe not necessarily needing too much previous training or experience, then you can go down a few steps. You can have the initial application and the interview, and then from there, you can decide if you want to have another interview or just stop at the first interview and make your offer letters from there. It really depends on who you're hiring, what you're hiring for, the capacity you're hiring, to make sure that the process is comprehensive, but also not excessively long. When you have excessively long application periods or processes, you're going to lose candidates along the way. Regardless if you think it's hard or easy for people to get jobs right now, some people will simply give out because they just don't feel valued enough to continue. The next thing you want to figure out is if there's any deal breaker questions that you're going to have scattered along the way. I like to have a few deal breaker questions on each stage of the process. What are deal breaker questions? So, for example, if your position is a hybrid remote position to a certain area, and in your application you ask, are they near the certain area, and they're like in another state, that's a deal breaker question. Another deal breaker question could be around experience, or for some more creative roles, submitting a portfolio. And then in your initial interview, you can have deal breaker questions kind of nestled in there. It's a little bit more complex and nuanced, but you can ask a deal breaker question in there. Something like that could be maybe how much the role pays for, and you want to confirm that on the call. Not everybody likes talking about money on a call, but if that's something you want to do, that's a good opportunity to bring up a deal breaker question. Now, in the third phase, if you're doing a secondary application or a paid skills assessment, those tend to be full of deal breaker questions. The hypotheticals can show you how somebody thinks. The paid skills assessment can show you how they work or how they produce work. So that in itself can be deal breakers. And then your final interview, I don't recommend it being heavily deal breakers because along the way you should be filtering people out. But if you get to a point on the final interview and you have really good top candidates, thinking of a good deal breaker question you can ask all 3 or all 4 or all 5 of them would be very helpful getting to the point of the final decision. Making sure your candidate's feeling valued, support, and heard along the way is not only important to me in my business, but a lot of candidates will still stick around through the application process, or if they see you post another position, they will apply again because they enjoyed your application process. What that looks like is if you have anybody going to the initial interview, the secondary application, or a final interview, making sure that you communicate with all of them because they've already spent their time and energy on you. Now, there's some questions about whether you should also notify people who simply applied. That can be dependent on the capacity of who's doing the hiring role. If it's just you and your business, I would say it's okay not to reply to every single person who applied unless you have an automated system and that you can easily do it. Otherwise, I would recommend putting your energy towards the people who spent time on interviews with you or in secondary applications, letting them know if they're moving forward or letting them know if they're not moving forward. Releasing candidates along the way is very helpful. If you have some people that you kind of want to keep in your back pocket until you have a final offer that is accepted, then feel free to keep them there. But if you have any questions, respond to them within a business day or two. Just let them know that you're still deciding. Just be very clear with them so that you're not lingering and wondering what's going on. You never want a candidate to ask you multiple questions after they've had some time with you, wondering what's going on, because it can leave a bad taste in their mouth if they've spent time and energy to apply, to get on a call with you, to get on a call with your hiring manager. When you get to the point that you want to release everybody, go ahead and release all the candidates. You can have a boilerplate templated response, but if you have anybody to the final stages of the interview process, it's a nice touch to add something that's specific to them, even if it's one line or two. It really shows that you care about each one of them as individuals, at least caring about the time that they spent with you. So I have a question for you. What is the biggest challenge you faced in setting up or designing a hiring process? I would love to hear about your experiences, so you can share them in the comments below. I want to add an additional note about compliance and laws. Now, obviously in this video, I can't touch on all of the nuances, and I'm not helping you create an actual job posting here, but I want you to keep in mind certain laws in the federal level as well as the state level, and maybe even local laws regarding pay, regarding hiring process, regarding any disclaimers that you may have to have, regarding the status of the employment type. For example, you can misclassify people if you are hiring a full-time role, but it's a contractor role, depending on where you are, depending on when you're watching this video. It could be a federal thing, it could be a state thing. I want you to be sure that you're researching, and your hiring manager should have some capacity to do that as well. If they do not, then I would recommend reaching out to an employment lawyer to just make sure that everything is dotted and crossed so that you are not misstepping legally. For the most part, if you go with best practices of hiring or creating a job description, you will probably make sure that you are not going to break any laws, but I just want to put this disclaimer here that please look into it depending on your state, your local, the federal, as well as your candidates areas. So for example, I'm in California and I know it's a limitation for some people to hire me as a contractor when it has to do with more support type roles because it could seem like misclassification. And a lot of people in hiring process may not want to work with me because of that, 'cause it's a little too muddy. But if you understand it correctly and you understand it deeply, then it would be fine and you can move forward. So just keep that in mind for you and your candidates. So we talked about attracting the right candidates, improving efficiency of your hiring process, also enhancing your brand by being communicative and valuing people who are applying for the position, and also a little bit about legal compliance. I'm not a lawyer, so I didn't go through that in depthly, but I just want to emphasize my key steps. Having a clear job description that will help you understand what you're hiring for, and that will help you determine what steps you need in your hiring process, such as the interviews, the assessments, the applications, anything like that. In other videos that may or may not be posted right now, like I mentioned, the job description video should already be posted, but I also will create videos about creating applications, both the initial as well as the secondary, and any other piece along the way. So if you are interested in videos about hiring processes, make sure to like, share, and subscribe, and comment below if you're wondering what the next step should be in the hiring process, and if you want a specific step you want me to go deep dive into. So there you have it. That's how you attract the right candidates, even increase your brand awareness because you are making sure that you are communicative with your candidates, as well as your job description, which will be in another video, should have your mission and about your company. I want to be sure that you understand the steps: a job description, the hiring process, including the initial interview, a potential secondary application or skills assessment, and a final interview, and then you offer. But if you have any other part in the hiring process that you're curious about, please comment below. I'll make sure I'll make a video on it. And if you're looking for someone to help you hire someone, look in my description box. I have a link to get a hold of me, and we can create a job description. We can go through the entire hiring process and find the candidate that's great for your business. But other than that, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like, share, and subscribe.